Hello, my name is Ken Yeager. I'd like to welcome you to night 2 of 3 nights of live streaming for the 18th annual Yosemite Facelift. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There's a button there.
And I'm Laura Waddles, the Executive Director of the YCA. And first things first, we did have some switch-ups in scheduling. So just to let you know what we're looking at tonight, we're going to have a video of the high-angle cleanups. And Jesse McGahee will be here speaking about that. We will also have both Leave No Trace and the Zero Landfill Initiative doing a Q&A. Then we're going to have Amity Warm, a video from her about climbing in Yosemite. And last we'll be showing a film that Christian Black prepared about slacklining, and then we'll have a live talk with him after.
Before we get started, I think we're going to have a quick word from the North Face. They're our co-presenting sponsor, and also from Subaru, the official vehicle of the Yosemite Facelift.
What kind of value are you looking for with your next new vehicle? With Subaru, you get Kelley Blue Book's 2020 Best Resale Value brand, 2020 Lowest 5-Year Cost to Own brand, and Most Trusted brand for 6 consecutive years. No wonder Kelley Blue Book also picked Subaru as their 2020 Best Overall brand. A trusted brand and a proven value. It's easy to love a Subaru.
Thanks again to our sponsors, the North Face and Subaru. Couple things to go over. First of all, we are over 1,000 people that have signed up and pre-registered to clean up trash, so thank you for that. That volunteering like that is a huge part of how Facelift continues. We need your engagement for this event, and we thank you for signing up. Another thing to go over tonight would be, although pre-registration is closed for the Yosemite portion, you can still sign up for Act Local, and the way that you're going to do that is you will go to yosemitefacelift.com. You'll follow the instructions for pre-registry, and then in order to enter for an awesome giveaway, what you'll do is post a photo on Instagram, and then you will hashtag Facelift Act Local. And you'll be entered to win one of 2 Patagonia jackets that will be a giveaway each day. So it's going to be their micro puff jackets, and the colors will vary. But yeah, that's a really generous donation from Patagonia that you'll be entered to possibly win. So next we will have we'll have a video of some high-angle cleanups, a really cool project that happens during Facelift, and climbing ranger Jesse McGahee will be here to talk about that.
Alright, pitch 0. Already got some trash. What you doing?
We're here with the Yosemite Mountaineer School and the Park Service Climbing Rangers. We're doing some cleanup for the facelift on the nose of El Capitan. Gonna go clean up some trash. Cut and tat. Look at all that garbage. A lot of garbage.
So decorated rock to some, but litter to the climbing management team and YMS guides doing this Yosemite Facelift cleanup project. So as much as I like to thank people for participating in the adventures of this special rock, maybe next time don't leave it on one of Yosemite's cliffs, especially at a popular bibby ledge where it could get knocked onto someone below, and at the very least it has to get packed out now. We got some classic empty harness bottles shoved in cracks, some old tat that people haven't cut away. It's just good practice to cut this stuff off the route when you see it so it doesn't build up and get all gross. Got some really old trash covered in rocks back there. Some bottles of urine that have been here for who knows how many years. Things of tape. Yeah, just pack out all your stuff. It should be pretty simple. Don't leave trash on the mountain. No one likes a trashy mountain.
Clean up trash. The old Texas place.
Iced tea in there, huh?
Yeah, got some iced tea.
Hey Christian, I do have tape. I could tag it. Hold on. Christian, you can go ahead.
We successfully spearfished some trash with this 12-foot pole and a knife taped to it out of this crevice. Haha. It's like spearfishing. Success. Back on the ground.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. We went up to Texas Flake, we picked up some trash, and we made it back down.
We had a pretty good time to move.
Yeah, we had a good crew. We picked up a bunch of stuff.
Nice work. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Wow, that was quite a film there. Seemed like most of that trash came out of Texas Flake on the nose. With us, we have Jesse McGahee. I'm going to ask him some questions. And first of all, is that Texas Flake where that came from?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that trash came from Texas Flake. They were cleaning the entire route as they were going up, but yeah, most of it came from Texas Flake.
And trash seems to be quite the problem on the nose. Is this something that you guys have to do every year or every 5 years, or how often?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, we every year, every other year, we'll do a cleanup on the nose, and usually we go down from the top and clean up Camp 6 and Camp 5 and places like that up on the upper dihedrals. And Camp 6 historically was like the trash dump of El Capitan, as you know, Ken. And this year, these guys, this is our first time we've teamed up with YMS, Yosemite Mountain School, and Josh and Greg, and we have two of our climbing rangers. Christian, you'll hear from later tonight on his slacklining program, and then Matt Bernstein, and that's just a really cool development that we've been able to start working, collaborating with them as well, and a cool thing to come out of the facelift.
How many years, Jesse, has the Park Service or the climbing management team been cleaning up on these high angle faces?
Well, you know, the first one that we did was 2006. We did two. We had a nose wipe, ground up, you know, 4-person overnight cleanup team. We did like 3 nights and hauled a bunch of garbage out of all the different bivvy sites and everything. And then we realized that you just can't clean up Camp 6 with ground up. We had to come in from the top. So later on that year, in conjunction with the facelift, we actually went down from the top in 2006. And then every other year we did another cleanup. And now the Camp 6 was piled up to the top. I wish we could have a photo to show everybody, but piled up to the top with garbage, and it's like a 30-foot deep crack, and now it's pretty much clean, and it's pretty amazing to go from there. There's some not historic, 50 years old, but like 1984 Olympics garbage in there, like the Coke bottle from 1984 Olympics, and some old batteries from Scotty Burke trying to free the nose and things like that. And but yeah, every year we chip away at it, and in general, like, even though there's all that nasty garbage, those piss bottles in particular, I have like some of the worst memories of my life of those bottles of urine exploding because the plastic falls apart, and then you try to pick it up to bring it out, and it just disintegrates. So I was worried about these guys and the biohazard of those bombs, and that smell will like last over the winter. You could smell it probably the next year. So it's a pretty critical mission, and the team there did an incredible job retrieving those in particular. They'd been up there for 3 years. I saw them like 2.5 years ago, the last time I did the nose, and I felt bad that I couldn't like bring them with me, but those guys did the work of Tutakanula, as we could say.
Well, don't leave stuff up there, people. How hard can it be?
I know. It's you'd think that, you know, we climbers do a pretty good job of, you know, cleaning up after themselves, and we like to talk about being self-policing and everything, and but unfortunately, self-policing also means that you have to clean up after other climbers, and we're fortunate here. We have like 5 climbing rangers seasonally, and me and a couple other rangers that climb, and YMS and Ken and everything that you've done, and the facelift. But most places around the world, there's just climbers. And so what you guys started doing last year with the Act Local, it's not just Yosemite that we should be cleaning up. Everybody should be going home to their own crags, and like, instead of complaining about somebody else leaving some trash or not burying their toilet or packing out their toilet paper and things like that, clean it up.
Yeah,
Take the opportunity, and don't, hate to say it, but don't complain about it. Just deal with it, and through your actions, other people will do the same thing.
I slept on Camp 6 for the first time in 1977. It was full of garbage to the top then, and it was the grossest night I ever spent. And I've never slept on it since because it stinks so bad.
Yeah. Well, now it's, you would like to sleep there now. It's clean again.
I'm going
And,
up tomorrow.
a lot of people are enjoying like bivvying in those spots, and they always will. Like, you can ignore some trash, but when it's all the way up to the brim, it's like the perfect bivvy ledge, the top of El Cap, and it should be clean.
Jesse, can you tell us about, there's a new permit process now that we're trying out. I believe it's for 2 years.
It's a pilot. Yeah,
it's a pilot program. Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, totally. So it's a good segue. The high angle trash cleanups are what climbing rangers like to call it, our extreme janitorial services. You know, we like to joke this part of our job security, but in reality, we'd rather be doing a lot of other things. And as much fun as it is to like work on these big cleanups, it'd be better if everybody just did the right thing to start with. And for years, in our laws and policy in all national parks, every overnight user, regardless in a wilderness area, every overnight user or camper would have to get a permit. And in Yosemite, there's been a long-standing exception. And I looked across all the national parks that I could think of that had climbing or backpacking, and there wasn't an exception that I could find where an overnight user could go out there without a permit. So that was one of the things. You know, it wasn't something that I alone decided to do or the climbing rangers decided to do. It's definitely park management was behind that, and we instituted this pilot project. It's not necessarily something that everybody's like, oh, this is going to be here to stay. We're going to go through a process. We're going to do some outreach. We're going to be leaning into you guys and Yosemite Climbing Association and other partners, Access Fund and American Alpine Club, and just climbers across country and across the world that are interested in giving us feedback. And stay tuned for that. Hopefully this winter we'll have a 8-week public comment period on the permits, the idea of like having big wall permits permanently. But as of now, we're going to go through this year and next year and see what works, see what doesn't. We'll probably change some things up. We already have. We've made a bunch of changes early on based on a lot of people's feedback and based on the climbing rangers that have been issuing it, and what works for them is just as critical as what works for other climbers. And I think if everybody works together, we'll have a program that everybody likes. I mean, right now, climbers will already get camping at Backpackers Camp before and after their wall climb. That's never happened before. And I personally hope that that's the beginning of like expanding some camping options for climbers in general, not just wall climbers. So there's a lot of things I would say that climbers didn't even realize it could be an advantage for them. You know, they're seen as a user that has to have the same accountability as any other user, and it's been remarkably like well received. We've had a lot of grumbling right off the bat online and on media, but since then, and people that have actually come in to get a permit who are climbing walls, it's been a remarkably positive interaction. We've had tons of great conversations with climbers, giving them good information on like, hey, this might not be the right climb for you. This is your first time in Yosemite. The nose might be too much for you to do. Or there's 10 other parties up there right now, and maybe another wall is the right thing to do. So I think overall it's been awesome. I'm not saying it's going to be here to stay. You know, that's for us with climbing community and others to decide, and park management, of course, because, you know, climbing rangers have to be able to be there to administer it, and so we have to decide if that's our priority. And there are alternatives, you know, to having a permit program and achieving the same goals, and so we'll explore all of that, and hopefully our goal is by next October, November, we'll be able to announce what our decision is moving forward with that program.
Is there a way for people to, you know, give comments right now or submit comments?
Yeah, so in the next month, October, you know, a lot of people call it Rocktober because it becomes our good weather season, and it goes into November now too, but for the month of October, we'll still be issuing permits in person with the climbing rangers and Yosemite Village at our permit issuing station, or at Ask a Climber out in El Cap Meadow in the afternoon. And we'll have comment forms available throughout the month of October for people to write in comments, and we'll also give them an email if they would rather do it back at home and send us a comment on that. But we'll do like an actual official public comment period, not necessarily using the same NEPA process you have with a big plan, but through one of our park sites. And the information will be out there, and we'll put it on your website, we'll put it on American Alpine Club and Access Fund, our website. I guarantee that we'll have a robust public outreach effort to give people an opportunity to comment on it.
Thanks so much, Jesse, for clearing that up. I know a lot of people are obviously curious about that. It's big news. So
Yeah, totally, and it's a huge shift, and I really appreciate your support in it. And Yosemite Conservancy has been, you know, we couldn't do it without them, because they've been paying for our climbing rangers, frankly, and we couldn't do it without your help and Access Fund and other groups that kind of give us the credibility in moving forward with this. But I have to say that climbers like myself and other climbing rangers are driving the program, and we're trying to tailor it to climbers' needs.
Cool. So I have a little comment about the end of your video that you played.
Yeah.
So I saw that you all mimicked the nose in a day photo, which is so iconic.
You mean this one?
Yep.
And what's really cool, and I'm pretty sure my favorite piece in the museum currently, is we actually have John Long's shirt from that photo. And it's pretty
Rad.
Crazy, psychedelic. Ken is bringing it up over here to show the
Pulling out the big guns. This actually belonged to Jim Bridwell, but John Long is actually wearing it in that picture.
Did he actually climb in that shirt?
Yeah, he did. Well,
Until he took it off.
correct. Jim Bridwell used it on the first ascent of the Sea of Dreams as well.
Oh my gosh.
So it went up several walls.
All right. Well, next year when we do team up with YMS, somebody's got to you got to take it out of that frame for us.
I don't know about that.
I'm
It's
just
pretty
kidding.
special, but maybe.
But I have to say, what was their time on that first
I think
nose in a day?
23 hours and something, just
Yeah.
under 24.
Yeah.
First
Well-
4 were fixed though.
Yeah. Well,
People don't know that.
you know, now we got camming devices and all those special tools, but those guys, they could have cleaned up the mountain and did what they were doing with a team of 4 in under 15 hours at the pace they were going, and safely. So I just got to hand it to those guys as excellent climbers and cleaners, you know. Extreme janitorial services.
Nice wrap up. Okay, so next we actually are going to have a music video from the band Movie Club. And they're our musician of the night. They are a, instrumental rock duo out of Venice Beach. And actually, Matt Wignall, who is Paul Wignall's brother, has worked with them as well. So Paul, anybody who watched last night saw his presentation. And Matt Wignall is also part of War Girl, who was the band that was featured yesterday. Anyway, that video is going to play, and then right after that, we'll come back with both Leave No Trace and Zero Landfill Initiative for a Q&A from them.
Go.
Woo! What's up, Facelift? This is Movie Club out of Venice Beach. Just wanted to say thanks for taking care of one of the most beautiful places in the world. We love you. Rock out.
Yeah, and please enjoy our music video. Peace.
Hi everyone, I'm Gary.
And I'm Haley, and we work for Leave No Trace, the Center for Outdoor Ethics. And this year we're also representing Subaru at Yosemite Facelift. And we're here with Tina, representing Yosemite Conservancy. So we are just gonna spend the next few minutes talking about Subaru's Zero Landfill initiative going on in Yosemite, and also how we can apply this zero landfill, zero waste mindset into our everyday lives. So that being said, just a little bit of background about the Zero Landfill initiative is that Subaru started this initiative in 2015 with 3 pilot parks, Yosemite being included, as well as Denali National Park and Grand Teton National Park. And since 2015, together these three parks have diverted 16 million pounds of trash from the landfill. So all three of these parks are making great progress, and they're continuing to work tirelessly to get to that zero waste status, which Tina will tell us a little bit more about in a little bit. But just first of all, we just wanted to say that I think the key to adapting this zero waste mindset into your everyday life and helping others around us to understand it is really helping people understand the why behind it. So that can mean understanding the environmental impact behind these small actions, like leaving your trash on the ground or not picking up other people's trash if you see it. And something as simple as an orange peel, which I had been told my whole life could be okay to leave out because it will decompose, but the reality is that it can take up to 2 years to decompose, and in the meantime it can disrupt wildlife, it can disrupt other visitors, and really diminish other people's experience. So when people understand kind of how this impact, how such a small action can add up to this cumulative impact, it really can help motivate people to want to leave a minimal waste and live this lifestyle. So that being said, Tina, can you tell us a little bit more about what this Zero Landfill initiative looks like in Yosemite specifically?
Sure. As she said, I'm Tina Mosley, and I am the Zero Landfill and Sustainability Coordinator for Yosemite Conservancy through the Subaru funded Zero Landfill initiative. And basically what my job entails is working with the National Park Service and various park partners to reduce our environmental footprint and move closer to zero waste status, which in hope to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase our local landfill lifespan.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. Thank you, Tina. So we do have a question for you, just in terms of visitors who may be at home watching. Hello to you, and thanks for tuning in. We just wanted to see if you had any tips for people who may be in the process of planning a trip into Yosemite. How can they plan ahead and prepare in order to help be a part of this Zero Landfill initiative?
Yeah, that's great. That's a good question. I think that it's the focal point is definitely in the preparation stage of visiting Yosemite. Something to know is Yosemite National Park falls within Mariposa County, which has a population of only 17,000, while Yosemite hosts over 4 million visitors each year. So that's huge. You can imagine what that waste generation, how that impacts our local county facility. So when you're getting ready and you're preparing to visit our national park, we want you to think about two things. We want you to think about what you're bringing into the park and what you're going to dispose of while you're here. So there's some little things that we hope that you will do when you come in minimizing that waste that you'll generate while in our park. And that can be as little as like bringing your own reusable mug, your own reusable water bottle, your reusable shopping bag, or using your backpack while you're here when you're shopping in our Yosemite stores. And then lastly, a reusable propane cylinder. And I know that sounds kind of funny, right? But it's something that we're trying to promote here in Yosemite. Everyone has probably seen these, right? Okay, so these are disposable propane cylinders, and they're all over our national parks and public lands. They're left behind. When they are used, they become hazardous waste, and they have to be processed as that, making them difficult to handle, transport, and recycle. And in Yosemite, we annually collect around 24,000 of these in our campgrounds, which is huge. So what we're trying to do is promote reusable propane cylinders. And this year, Yosemite Hospitality stopped selling disposable propane cylinders and started selling only a reusable propane cylinder in their stores. So this is by Little Camper, And what we're hoping that to understand is that, so when you use these, you can purchase them, and then you use the fuel, and then you bring the cylinder back to the store and trade it out for another full cylinder at a fraction of the price. So what I think is really interesting about this, right, is that this is manufactured 40 million times over every year in North America, while this has a lifespan of 12 years. So this has a one-time shelf life, and this keeps going over and over again for 12 years. Pretty incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So to circle back, in short, what we hope is that you understand that your actions matter. Okay? And these small decisions like a reusable bag, a reusable mug, a reusable water bottle, and reusable propane cylinders helps preserve and protect the Yosemite that we know and love.
Totally. I love those tips.
Yeah, well said.
And for people watching at home, if you have any other, thoughts of resources you need, go to lnt.org to find out other resources and materials to leave no trace when you go outside. So, yeah, and up next is a climbing film by Amity. So, let's enjoy.
Hi Yosemite Facelift crew, thank you all for coming out to volunteer. My name is Amity Warm, and I'm stoked to be a small part of the event this year. This evening, I'll share a little bit about my background and a few stories from my time here in Yosemite this spring. I grew up doing competitive gymnastics until a career-ending injury forced me to switch tracks. So even though I'm from Colorado, I didn't start rock climbing until I moved away to Texas for college. There, I worked for the Outdoor Adventure program and met Connor, who is now my husband. He took me climbing outside for the first time, and we like to say it was love at first sight, with the climbing. But eventually I realized I was super into Connor as well. A few years after college, we built out our van and committed more fully to the adventure life. Eventually, I decided to go back to school, and I'm now pursuing a master's degree in sports nutrition. I'm psyched to end up working with climbers and work on bringing a more positive approach to food, fueling, and body weight to the climbing community. Alright, enough of me sitting here, let's get to the action. This spring, I had the opportunity to spend almost 2 months in Yosemite. I had only been once before, for a couple of weeks, so it was a treat to really get to experience such an incredible place. Oddly, I hadn't even planned to be in Yosemite this spring, so I really had no objectives or expectations coming into the trip. Connor had a full-time work commitment in Colorado, so I ended up climbing with several different partners, which was neat because I don't think I would have had the confidence to go for the big missions like Freerider, Nose in a Day, or Golden Gate if my partner hadn't been stoked on those. Spending an extended period of time in the valley allowed me to really dial in my systems and routine. In the 2 months I was there, I climbed over 350 pitches, including 3 trips up El Cap, and all 3 513s on Fifi Buttress. I would climb for several days in a row, then go get cell service in the visitor center parking lot and crank out a bunch of schoolwork on rest days. I was living the dream. When I first got to Yosemite, I linked up with Will Sharp. This guy's the real deal. Not only does he crush hard, he's also got his big wall systems dialed. As we were making our way up Freerider, he patiently taught me crucial skills like how to set up a portaledge, haul 200 pounds of gear.
Calling on the 2-to-1 like a boss. She's moving like 200 pounds of shit like it's nothing, dude.
Yeah!
And camp on the side of a wall. Will had been on Freerider last fall, so I knew he had a great shot of sending it this spring. I wasn't sure if it was possible for me, but I went up there stoked to support him and give it my best shot. This is a photo of me following the Hollow Flake pitch. Fun fact, I actually really enjoy climbing chimneys. And here's a photo of Will right before he sent the crux pitch, the boulder problem. When my turn came to try the boulder problem, I was pretty intimidated. I was still trying to get my Yosemite legs under me, and I was feeling worked over from groveling up the monster off-width the day before with my extremely poor technique. I tried it several times, attempting to figure out the beta that worked best for me. Every time, I was close, but just couldn't quite put it together.
I was ready to call it quits and go into full support mode for Will. But then, Sam and Adrian, the two stoked young crushers up there at the same time as us, took a turn and figured out some clutch new beta. So, I agreed to a last-ditch hero session that evening. With these three cheering me on, I finally managed to stick the crux. As you can see in the video, my stoke and relief were palpable. We were moving on, and both still sending.
Go get it, dude. Come on.
Right there. Perfect. Trust it. It's super good. Got it. Right there. Nice.
Come on, Amity. Hang in there. Keep breathing.
I got you.
Keep breathing.
Watch me. I'm with you. I got you really good.
Focus.
Yeah, you got it. Right there.
Come on.
Nice. I got you. Nice. Watch me.
Take a deep breath, dude. Come on.
You got it.
Time is now.
You got it. Go get it. Try hard. Everything you got. Come on. Come on.
Come on.
Come on. Come on.
Come on, Amity.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
You got it. Come on.
Come on.
Yeah. Awesome. Come on.
Hang in there.
Come on.
Keep breathing.
Yeah, nice.
You got good holds coming.
You got it. Hang in there. You got good holds.
Thanks, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it.
Fucking crushed it, dude.
I'm so happy. Okay, I just gotta finish it.
Take it slow. They're good holds.
We still had a ways to go, but by the end of the next day, we were celebrating on the summit, both having sent Freerider. My takeaway lesson from this adventure? Approach each mission with an open mind and be willing to learn from others. Will greatly expanded my repertoire of climbing knowledge, and I'm grateful for our partnership. Alright, next I'm going to share a few photos from up on Golden Gate and talk a little more in depth about the highs and lows of that experience. I climbed Golden Gate with Tyler Carow, who also had an epic season in the valley this year. Tyler and I had only just met when he asked if I was interested in trying to free Golden Gate ground up with him. What? Yeah, sure. 2 days later, we were packed and hauling our gear to Heart Ledges. Here you can see the entire contents of our haul bags before we loaded them up. Golden Gate has 4 crux pitches. Well, 5 if you count the monster off with, but I had leveled up since I first climbed the monster on Freerider. This time around, I wore an approach shoe and a knee pad, and I cruised my way up this beast. I was almost having fun in there. Anyway, the first real crux is the down climb. We tried this pitch a couple times on the evening of day 2, but neither Tyler nor I figured it out. I went to bed discouraged, but hopeful that a night of sleep and cool morning temps would help. The next morning, we both tried again. I fell a couple of times, and the doubt quickly crept in. I was pretty convinced my shot at sending Golden Gate was going to be thwarted by the first crux. But I rested for a bit, gathered my confidence, and went for it again. And by some force of magic that I still don't quite comprehend, I stayed on. Better yet, Tyler sent it right after. We were cleared for launch. Onward and upward. We blasted through the next several pitches to the base of the second crux. There's no natural ledge here, so it is a fully hanging bivvy. Now, my stoked face might not show it in the photo, but it's fairly uncomfortable, so we hope to send this pitch quickly. After setting up camp and waiting for evening shade, I went up for my first attempt on the move. I fell, but then took some time figuring out the right beta for my body. Tyler had a beta burn as well. Then I donned my headlamp because it was fully dark by this time, but I thought I had a decent shot at sending the pitch. I dispatched the intro moves, paused at the good rest, then fired through the crux. Pumped out of my mind, I barely made it through the last hard sequence. But now I had checked off 2 of 4 crux pitches, by the evening of day 3. Tyler sent it the next morning, and we kept cruising up the wall. Several more pitches took us to the Tower to the People ledge, an amazing bivvy over 2,000 feet off the ground. As you can see, Tyler was immediately at home. From here, we had 2 more cruxes, then several hundred feet of easier climbing to the summit. I was stoked for this pitch, the Golden Desert, because it presents the most true crack climbing of any of the cruxes. That evening of our 4th day on the wall, I on-sighted the Golden Desert. This photo was taken after the fact, but the evident stoke level was the same. After navigating the initial face climbing move, Tyler cruised up after me, and we decided to try the A5 traverse right as dusk was falling. Now, I just want to take a second to point something out that may blow your mind. Before we left the ground 4 days ago, Tyler had only ever sent 2 pitches of 513 and had never even brushed a hold. Already up here, he had more than doubled his 513 count and become a top-tier brusher. Well, neither of us sent the A5 traverse the evening before, so on the morning of the 5th day, we set out to try it again. Hopes were high at this point. We only had 1 more crux pitch, and we were way ahead of our initial schedule on the wall. Tyler was looking strong that morning, and he sent the pitch quickly. I, on the other hand, had not yet figured out good beta. By the time sun hit the wall late morning, I still had not sent the pitch. We posted up at our bivvy on Tower to the People to wait for evening shade so I could give the A5 another shot. Despite Tyler's best efforts to reassure me, I was exceedingly nervous that I wouldn't be able to pull myself together and climb the pitch cleanly. I was anxious all day as we lounged, ate, hydrated, jammed out to Tyler's tunes, and observed the tiny cars and people on the valley floor. Finally, cooler evening temps arrived, and it was time for me to give a hero go. I made myself relax, then launched into the pitch, and sent it! I'm pretty sure everyone else on El Cap heard us hooting and hollering that night. We were both going to send Golden Gate, ground up. We were so psyched. My takeaway from this mission? Never underestimate the power of teamwork. Tyler brought his impressive logistical prowess and problem-solving skills to the team, while I contributed some serious try-hard and perseverance. Our cumulative stoke powered our ascent. The combination of our strengths allowed us to achieve something neither of us could have done on our own. Also, you should go check out Tyler's YouTube channel for some highly humorous and educational climbing videos, including a recap of our time on Golden Gate. Also, a huge thank you to Felipe Nordenflicht for taking these incredible photos of Tyler and I on Golden Gate. Check out his Instagram for more of his incredible work. And of course, a huge thank you to Camp, Himali, and Endurobytes for all your support. Thank you for encouraging and equipping me to go pursue my goals. All right, from here in Colorado, I just want to say thank you all for listening to me tonight. If you have any questions about climbing in general, my spring in Yosemite, what I'm up to now, nutrition, or anything else, please feel free to reach out on my Instagram at @AmityWarm. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, Amity, for that wonderful presentation. She can't be with us tonight. It's kind of amazing what she did in one climbing season here. She did El Cap, the nose in a day. She did 2 free routes on El Cap, including Golden Gate. I understand she did multiple hard, long free climbs during the same season. Most climbers would consider that a lifetime achievement. Not her, that's just one season in Yosemite. The kids these days.
Yeah, Amity, that was really impressive. Thanks for that video. I have a little comment to follow up with regarding Tina's presentation from Zero Landfill Initiative. I really appreciate that she brought up that Yosemite's trash actually goes into the Mariposa County local dump. And something interesting with that is here, most people don't get trash pickup. Most of us drive our own trash to the dump, and that definitely hits differently when you are directly placing your trash bags into the earth. So I really appreciate her working on reducing waste for the local community. Next, we're going to have Christian Black. He has a presentation about slacklining.
Highlining is, and always has been, a solitary sport. Despite the team of effort it takes to rig a line, when it all comes down to it, you are by yourself, only with the wind, your mind, and your breath. And what highlining does best is bridge that gap between your mind believing and your body executing, between how you perceive what you're capable of and what you're actually capable of. But if highlining is anything, it's a metaphor for life. To stay calm, to keep moving, and to find balance. And sometimes we fall, but we try again. Hello, Yosemite Facelift. This is Christian Black speaking. I'm a climbing ranger for Yosemite National Park this year, and I'm also a highliner. Pretty excited to talk to you guys tonight a little bit about highlining and how it pertains to Yosemite. We're going to talk a little bit about how highlining has bridged the gap of possibility and its origins in Yosemite and how it's continuing to bridge the gap nowadays. Before we get started with Yosemite slacklining and highlining history, I would like to give a brief introduction to my relationship with the sport. And it all started here at this summer camp in Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park called Montecito Sequoia Lodge. I came out here right after I graduated college in the summer of 2017 as a climbing instructor for the season, and also ended up being a slacklining instructor with a friend of mine. As my friend and I got better and better at slacklining throughout the summer, we were searching YouTube for new things to learn, and we stumbled across highlining, and that was kind of the first moment that I knew I wanted to get on a highline. And finally, that fall, about 4 years ago, I finally had the chance to get on the highline for my first time here in Yosemite at the rostrum. And this was probably one of the most intense moments of my life. I vividly remember being horrified, sitting on the edge of the cliff and actually trying to chalk up behind me because I was so nervous. And nothing will ever quite compare to that first fall looking down at the bottom of the rostrum. Since then, highlining has taken me many awesome places and has allowed me to experience places with new perspectives, not just Yosemite. It's allowed me to take falls, some of the most scenic locations on Earth. It's taken me to new continents and new cultures, like this highline we established in November of 2019 in the Great Getu Arch in China. And it's also allowed me to be terrified for over an hour as I'm stuck on a large slackline trying to get to the other side. Now that you understand a little bit about who I am, I'd like to transition into the first part of the talk and talk a little bit about why highlining is so important to the story of Yosemite. And we'll begin with a first-person interview with Scott Balcom. He's the first highliner to ever exist. Enjoy.
So in 1983, I was in Yosemite. I was 20 years old, and I saw these two guys walking on tubular nylon webbing. They could swing the lines, they could bounce the lines, they could juggle with clubs and pass clubs back and forth on two parallel lines. And I thought, that is the shit. And I had walked rope as a child. I had walked on railroad tracks. I had walked on the edges of buildings being framed, and I was always interested in that, and sucked at ballwards and stuff. And so I was already walking on parking lot chains and stuff like that. But when I saw slackline, there was this dynamic about it that was so awesome. So I left Yosemite and went home and started buying every kind of webbing that they sold at Sport Chalet in La Cañada in Southern California. And my friend Chris Carpenter was also there. He was also inspired. And in November of that year, we stretched a piece of 2-inch tubular nylon webbing underneath a freeway bridge in Pasadena. And tubular nylon webbing is what we used to use for swami belts. Harnesses were just coming in, and most people wore a swami belt. And it was, so I bought this big piece, and we walked in underneath. We had a belay, and we had, because it was arches, so if the whole line went down, you would just swing. And so it seemed fairly safe. It was pretty short. Chris Carpenter and I both walked it. And then I wanted to walk the Lost Arrow Spire. 1984, I went up to the Lost Arrow Spire and scared the shit out of myself because the bridge walk wasn't scary enough to prepare me to walk the spire, and I hadn't done any big walls. As soon as I was on top of the spire, I was wishing that I wasn't there. So I fell a bunch of times, and I thought I was giving up too easy. So I decided, okay, this time I'm really going to try. I have to try really hard. I'm giving up too easy. I'm jumping back. I'm falling and catching. And so I'm going to try really hard this time. Take a couple steps out. And the line, the beginning of the line is really hard. And so I tried really hard. By the time I realized I'm falling, I'm looking between my outstretched arms into the Lost Arrow chimney. And I had read a story about the people that explored the Lost Arrow chimney, and one guy had rappelled off of the end of the rope into the Lost Arrow chimney. And of course, it was a fatal situation. And I was the Lost Arrow chimney's next meal as I'm falling between my outstretched arms. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at the notch that's only 250 feet below. And then I'm looking at the valley floor, roughly 2,891 feet down or whatever it is. And then I'm swinging like this, and then I just instinctively grabbed the line, and then I was back up on the spire, and it was like throwing a cat in a bathtub, And my friend Darren, who climbed the spire for me and was sitting right there on the spire, he goes, "That was rad. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen any of us do. You were flying through the sky like Superman with your arms stretched out in front of you. You screamed like a girl." In 85, I was more focused, and I tried a bunch of times, and I got halfway out one time and I fell, and then I got a third of the way out one time and I fell. And then I got about 4 or 5 steps out, and I'm balancing, and I'm lusting for the other side. I want to be over there. A friend of mine was sitting on the flake, and I was like, I just want to be over there. I just want to be over there. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You're 4 or 5 steps out. You've only been this far out, like three times. And so, because the beginning of the line is the hardest, so just focus on balance right now. Okay. Make an adjustment. Okay, balance. And I just started being right where I was. So I wasn't aware of being out in the middle. I wasn't aware of any of that. I was still just trying to compress my whole intention into just now the balance of the moment. I got about 20 feet from the other side, and I finally got locked in. And there wasn't much exposure. I'm looking at the wall. I'm looking my friend in the eye. And at that moment, it clicked. I knew I had it. And I just step on the flake. And it was an awesome experience. So to me, it was like an art project. It was like, I can do this on the ground. I should be able to do it high. It's easy, right? It's mind over matter. It turned out there's like this lizard brain thing that kind of got away of the mind over matter thing. The first time, every cell in my body, individually and in unison, I could feel this, was screaming, "Don't do it!" And to overcome that, I'm sure a lot of you have been on a Highline, and you've probably experienced the same thing. And overriding that is tremendously difficult.
Special thanks to Ryan Jenks and Scott Balcom for that awesome interview about the first experience on the Lost Arrow Highline. Now, it's worth mentioning that Scott was not the first slackliner. Slacklining also had its origins in Yosemite Valley, but much earlier, actually in the 1950s, starting with Pat Ament, Chuck Pratt, and Chongo, slack chaining as a rest day activity from climbing. Now, this slack chaining became a super integral part of the climbing culture in the 1970s. In the words of Dean Fidelman, if you were living a climbing lifestyle, you slack chained. If you didn't, it meant you weren't part of our culture. However, it wasn't until the 1980s when the first actual slackline came into existence. And that was through this gentleman here, Adam Krazowski. He saw someone slack chaining in Camp 4 and decided it looked fun. When he returned back to college in Washington, went to the hardware store and bought out some climbing webbing to try out. Slacklining on flat climbing webbing ended up being much more comfortable, much more lightweight, and a lot more fun due to how dynamic it was, so it became the popular form of the sport from then on. And eventually, Adam Krazowski and his roommate, Jeff Ellington, repurposed some search and rescue equipment and found a way to tension the slackline and keep it lower to the ground. Since slacklining's inception in Yosemite Valley in the early 1980s, it's progressed exponentially ever since. Just 20 years after the short 55-foot Lost Arrow Spire Highline was walked, the 1,000-foot record is broken. The current record stands at 2.2 kilometers for the longest highline ever walked without falling. Yosemite Valley has always been the center of inspiration and motivation for the growth of slacklining and highlining, and it continues to be one of the best places in the world to practice the sport. Currently, there's about 50 different established highlines within Yosemite National Park. In this next section, I'd like to highlight some of the most beautiful lines in the park and give you a perspective on some of the unique places that highlining can take you within the park. It's worth mentioning that these next lines are waterfall lines that are currently banned in Yosemite. However, these photos and lines were rigged before the ban took place, but I wanted to include them because it shows a really unique perspective of some of the coolest spots in Yosemite. As you can imagine, we get a lot of questions as highliners when bystanders see us. Have you seen men on a wire? How do you get the line across? Does your mom know you do this? This next section will help answer some of the basic questions about how modern highlining works, a little bit about rigging, and a little bit about the equipment. Enjoy. Hello everyone, this is Christian here, and today we're in the back of Balcom Meadow, and I just wanted to give you guys a quick example of some highline rigging and equipment. Now, one of the cool things about all the highlines that have been established in the last 5 years in the park is they all are rigged all naturally. And what natural rigging is basically a combination of wrapping boulders, using cams, using trees, any sort of natural sort of anchors that you can equalize into a master point and rig off of that, so you don't have to place any bolts. So just as a rough example, here I've equalized 3 trees, but you could imagine this could be anything. This could be a cam cluster over here, a whole cam anchor. This could be a large boulder that you wrapped. This could be a big flake that you wrapped, and then you bring them all to an equalized master point here in the center where you want your anchor point to be. And the last thing you would do is use some sort of rope protection or rope padding to protect some of the sharpest points so that if the line goes up and down, it doesn't abrade it and cut it. All right, and now that we have an anchor set up, the next part of the rigging process would be getting the slack line across the gap. Now that can sometimes be the most challenging part of the rigging, but it's also one of the most fun. And it all starts with using what's called a tag line. And most of the time we just use 4mm paracord, pretty easy. So if it's a V-shaped notch, such as at Taft Point, you can just walk the paracord tag line around the notch, and then you have a connection on both sides of the gap, or you can get more creative. For example, when we rigged the higher cathedral spire to lower cathedral spire highline, we had a climbing team on each side, and we threw a tag line into the notch in the middle and had a third team connect them, and then we were able to pull up the tag line in between the anchors, so we had a connection from one spire to the other. So once the tag line is across, typically one team on one anchor will be pulling the tag line through a progress capture such as a micro traction to help hold the weight of the slackline webbing, and this can sometimes take a little while to get the line across. And then finally, once you have it, you'll hook it into your anchor here. Alright, so now that the static side of the anchor is hooked in, I'll show you a couple pieces of equipment that we use. One of them are these steel shackles. These are rated to about 60 kilonewtons. And we also use these ones called soft shackles made out of braided amp steel rope. These are also about as strong as 60 or 70 kilonewtons. And here on the main line, we have what's called a soft release, which is about 5 or 6 wraps of webbing that's tied off in a releasable hitch, and that'll help us detension in the line later once there's a bunch of tension on it for de-rigging. Now that we've installed the far side anchor over there on the static side, we've also just installed the tension side anchor. Now on the tension side, we use what's called a web lock, which is a special piece of slackline equipment that takes a bite of the webbing and puts it in a configuration where you can pull slack through one side and tighten the line, but it doesn't come out through the other side. Now you'll notice that there's 2 lines here. This main one is going to be the tension line that we walk on, and this one below it is the backup line. The backup line is there in case the main line fails, but we also keep it loose and taped to the line like this because it acts as a wind dampener and keeps the line from oscillating in the wind. Now when we tension the lines, we don't actually use that much force. Back in the day, they used to rig them very tight, but modern Highlines are pretty loose. And we actually only use basically a 3-to-1. We start with a piece of equipment out here called a line grip that clamps the webbing, and we take the brake strand of the webbing out of the web lock through a redirect, which is a special carabiner suited for 1-inch webbing, and then we pull on it, which is about a 3-to-1. And for most Highlines underneath 100 meters, this is about all you need. And the last piece of equipment we'll talk about is the leash, which we would have pre-installed over both pieces of slackline webbing when we tagged the line across. The leash is made up of 2 forged aluminum rings or 1 large steel ring. And the piece of rope you tie into is a piece of climbing rope that's threaded through tubular webbing, and that just makes it a little fatter and easier to grab. And you tie into it just like you would a climbing rope. And the last thing is that once everything is all set up and you've double checked it and you've tied into the leash, you've had a partner double check you, you're ready to highline. The last thing I'd like to talk about is a little bit about the strength of all the equipment and the types of forces that we're seeing on these highlines. Now, the weakest part of this whole system is the slackline webbing at probably 20 to 30 kilonewtons on average. Now, the max force that we rig modern highlines at is only between 2.5 to 5 kilonewtons, with peak forces around 7 kilonewtons. So you're still getting over twice as much strength out of the material as you'll ever see on your whole system. Although highlining does seem scary mentally, it's actually one of the safest forms of slacklining, even safer than doing it on the ground. So, knowing that, despite how scared you might be when you slide it on the line for the first time, you can be warm and fuzzy knowing that you're totally safe.
In this last section, I'd like to briefly touch on how my role as a climbing ranger this year has allowed me to bridge the gap of perception between highlining and the public. For the first time this spring, I actually got to go on a highlining patrol to Taft Point, and we were able to educate over 100 visitors and talk to over 15 highliners during a project and perform public outreach just like the way we do with climbers. During the patrol, I gave 3 different impromptu interpretational talks to over 100 visitors altogether. And we talked about highline rigging, highline safety, controlling fear, controlling mind, the requirements of the athlete, and answered lots of questions. The informational talks and Q&A sessions with the visitors were extremely productive, and everyone was really excited to hear about how highlining worked and had lots of really good questions. This was the first patrol of its kind for the National Park Service, and I really hope it's something that can be a stepping stone to bridging the gap between the Park Service and the public regarding the perception of highlining. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you all learned a bit about highlining and had fun on the way, and I hope that Yosemite can continue to inspire you as well to find balance in your own ways, on or off a highline. I'll leave you with one last clip. Control your breath, control your mind. Accept the fear, calm it into submission. Stay balanced, keep moving. This is what it's about. Not just a sport, but a mindset. Special thanks to Ryan Jenks, Ryan Sheridan, Mitch Jacobs, Kim Weglin, Dean Fidelman, Scott Balcom, George Myers, Emily Kaufman, and many more for help with rigging projects, photography, and historical information.
Thank you, Christian, for that informative video. I find this stuff kind of fascinating. As a long-term resident in Yosemite, I remember the beginnings of the slack lines, and most of them were 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and this high rigging, you know, thousands of feet off the ground is a whole new level that I've never seen before. And I don't know what to compare it to in climbing, but I'd almost compare it to maybe the golden age of climbing when we were doing El Cap routes in the 60s, or what would you call it?
Yeah, I would say it is pretty much the golden age of highlining right now. Just within the last few years, the exponential growth of the sport is pretty apparent. You can really see people doing lots of new tricks, and the lines are getting longer and longer and longer. The current record is, you know, over 2 kilometers, and that's just unfathomable, something that you wouldn't even see a few years ago.
Do you think they're gonna go from across the valley, from north side to south side someday? Is that the next goal?
I have heard talkings that is a dream among California highliners. I think the question is whether or not the Park Service will let that happen, but we can hope and pray that one day you might see it.
Have you considered doing it at night?
That's true. You know, I have highlined at night before. It's not as easy as you would think. It's not, well, you probably don't think it's easy either.
You can have it. I got a question. Has rescue team ever had to rescue a highliner?
No, there haven't been any highline rescues. There are systems that have been developed among highliners, and if you go to highline festivals, they do have rescue teams there and a system ready in place to get people off the line. Now, what's interesting is that in places like France, and in Europe, where it's super popular, they've actually done short haul rescue trainings off of highlines before as practice. So I did a couple seasons on the search and rescue team here, and I always thought it would be super fun to like get an actual highline rescue protocol done, because it's a little different than some other forms of rescue, but I don't think it is necessarily any harder.
And I got one more question for you. I mean, a lot of people, you hear about people doing these highlines leashless, which seems crazy to me, but how many people do that? Do a lot of people do that?
That's a good question. I mean, there's probably only a handful in the world that do it, just like there's probably only a handful of people who do kind of high-end rock climb free soloing. The thing with soloing highlines is that those people are really good at catching the line whenever they fall, and they've practiced that on the ground lots of times, so there's actually a slight margin of safety. But again, definitely not for everyone. Probably only a handful of people in the world.
So Christian, in that video, you did have a section of lines that you were saying in front of the falls that are now banned. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it happened in 2016. The Yosemite National Park put a blanket ban on all slack lines and high lines over waterways. And the reason for that was that Yosemite Falls Highline is a super historic highline. It's really aesthetic, it's really fun to walk. And it was getting rigged a lot, and so there were concerns that it was obstructing the aesthetic view for some of the other park visitors. So that was one of the reasons it got banned. But what's interesting is that, you know, going up and doing these highline patrols for the first time and getting to talk to all the highliners and be involved in the communities, is that they're really making an effort to try to work with the Park Service and build those good relations, just like
climbers have been doing, just like what Facelift does with climbers in the Park Service, Highliners are trying to do now. And one of their main concerns is they really want to regain access to some of those lines, whether it be through a permit system or some other form of allowed access. But that was one of the interesting points that got brought up a lot during the Highline patrols.
Well, thanks so much, Christian, for your presentation. I didn't really know much about slacklining, so I thought it did a really good job giving a basis for somebody like me.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a really fun project to do, and it's been pretty cool to be in the position to kind of be an intermediary between the Highline community and the NPS, because there hasn't been many people who have kind of walked in both worlds. So this has been a really fun opportunity to kind of like talk about highlining and slacklining and try to normalize and get understood in the climbing world. And because like you said, it's kind of in the golden age right now, and it's just going to keep growing. You're going to be seeing more of it, so might as well have people understand it.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear that it's in the golden age. So up next, we have one last music video from Movie Club.
Big thank you to Jessamine and Vince from Movie Club. Thank you so much for that video. I'd also like to thank Ed, Jim, Karen, Michelle. They're our live streaming crew. Everybody else that helped. I'd also like to thank our presenters tonight, the presenters last night, and we have more presenters tomorrow. I'd also like to thank our sponsors and all our volunteers out there that are cleaning up trash, not only in Yosemite, but all around the world. We have, as Laura mentioned earlier, we have over 1,000 people signed up already. You can still sign up as part of our Act Local event. Just go to the YosemiteFacelift.com website and sign up. We got a lot of great prizes. I want to say one other thing is that you can support YCA, Yosemite Climbing Association. We do the Yosemite Facelift. We help with other cleanups all over. We'd like to do more of them. We also put together a Yosemite Climbing Museum in Mariposa. Come down and visit it. It's 5180 Highway 140, right on the highway by the four-way stop. Other ways that you can help support us is buy some beer from Tioga Sequoia. We have a facelift label right here. You can buy it in Yosemite Valley at the store, the regular store, and I believe they have it at Curry Village as well. Buy a beer and help support YCA. Jim, can you do a little pan around the museum for us? We'll give you a little sneak preview of the museum we just built. We opened in June. We're open Friday, Saturday, and Sundays for now, 10 to 4. Come see us. If you want a private tour, you can give us a call and we'll set that up for you. We have climbing gear from 1875 to modern day, so starting with the very first ascent of Half Dome. I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. If you liked this video, please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this. Some things that you can expect tomorrow. There were some schedule switch ups. So tomorrow we will have a video on Hetch Hetchy and then a live talk after that. We will also have a video from Priscilla with aerial silks, and we'll have a live talk after that one as well. And last, one of our own, Kaya, who is on the YCA team as our social media manager, she actually prepared a really amazing film, and that is called Girls Gone Wide. So tune in tomorrow, and everybody have a good night.
Good night. See you tomorrow.